and welcome to your real estate journey, expert tips for buyers and sellers. I am Dolly Lopez, your realtor and broker in the state of Florida and Kentucky. In this podcast, we normally provide you with advices for you to make informed and educated decisions in your real estate journey. Today, I am joined by one of my favorite attorneys, Valerie. Welcome. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you. So excited to be here today with all of your followers.
I'm very excited to have you on board like every single week. And I'm so blessed that you are so you can actually educate us and stuff. So today, and I say stuff because there's so much to learn
There
and
is.
none of
There
this
is.
is, and there's none of this is being taught. That's cool. And
Unfortunately, it's not. It should be because it's life, right? But it's not.
I know. Exactly. So, anyways, today we're gonna talk about a survey. Um, what is a survey? Let's start with that.
Yeah. So a survey is it's going to show you your property lines. And when I say property lines, it's going to show you exactly where the property you're buying begins and where it ends, both its width and its height. So it's going to show you absolutely everything. It's also going to show you the measurements of the structure that you're buying. So it's super important to know that you're going to need it for every closing. So for every time you purchase a property, you're going to need a survey. And every time you refinance, if you have not messed with the structure, and when I say that is if you have not added to the structure, if you have not added another bathroom where you're expanding the structure, right? I'm not talking about adding a bathroom within the structure that's already been given to you. But if you are adding a bathroom or a bedroom or whatever it may be, and it expands the structure itself, then you're going to need a new survey. If you have not done that, then in a refinance, all you simply have to do is fill out a survey affidavit where you attest that the survey remains the same because the structures have not changed. So it's very important that every buyer and every person who refinance knows that you will need a survey.
Good. Okay. So, first, is there a fee? And if the surveys, can you transfer from one owner to the other?
Okay. So yes, there is definitely a fee associated with getting a survey. That fee, you're typically not going to see it until the day of closing. It's not a very high fee unless we're talking about buying acres of land, right? So if we're talking about buying, 5-acre pieces of land, yes, we're talking about a survey that may cost upwards of maybe $800 to $1,000. But if we're talking about a normal plot of land, 10 to 12,000 square feet, which is, typically what you see here in Miami or what you see in the state of Florida, you're talking about community, then you're looking anywhere between 350 and a 450. That's like the most that you'll see. Some counties do charge a little less. Some counties do charge a little more, but you're never going to be charged. It's never compared to the purchase price. You're not talking about tens of thousands of dollars. You're talking about, just a few $100 that you're going to have to spend, and you won't see it until the day of closing because you're not going to pay that up front. That's something the title company will pay up front and then collect at closing.
Good. So, can you transfer from a seller to a buyer?
So you can. That is something that you can do. When it's not financed, and then that's another thing that's very important to know. When you're dealing with a cash deal, your buyer, you're buying in cash. Your seller can transfer over the survey to you if the survey has not expired. Typically, surveys will expire within 10 years, give or take. If it is past those 10 years, then unfortunately the seller won't be able to transfer it to you. I never recommend a transfer because I feel like it's not a huge cost and it's something that you, the buyer, are always going to need. Because if you ever want to do a fence, if you ever want to construct a pool, if you ever want to add to your structure, if you ever want to build a shed, if you ever want to do anything to your actual land, it's always great to have a survey, and it's great to have a survey from once you purchase it because they expire. Believe it or not, the 10 years go by pretty quickly when you own a home. So it's always very important that I tell my clients, get it yourself. It's not a very high cost. You're not going to feel it compared to, the purchase of the actual home. And you should have it to secure yourself and so that you need it in the future.
Completely agree. So show me what a survey is. What does it look like? Hold
Yeah.
on.
So if we can pull up a survey. All right. So it gets a little confusing to look at, and I don't want anyone to get discouraged. But if we look at it, those green lines, we see kind of like a rectangle, and we see some green lines. Those green lines are going to be your property lines. It's literally going to be where your property ends and where it starts. So that green line is going to tell you your exact measurements and where your property ends and where it begins. So that green line right there on top is going to show you the width, and then you have your length, which is going to go all the way down. If you look at the length of it, you'll see that there's kind of black lines with some X's on the left, and then on the right, you see like some dashes. So if we go down to if you keep going down to the ledger, here we go. You're going to see what the lines mean. So one of the lines is a chain link fence. So the ones with X's are the chain link fences. The ones with the dashes is a wood fence. So you'll notice in this specific property, the right-hand side is a wooden fence and the left-hand side is a chain link fence. So it also lets you know what kind of fencing this property has, if any. And then if we go back up, the blue line that we see there is the structure itself, and it tells you the measurements of the structure. So if you see there, the back of the house is 22 feet 60 inches. So that we know where the structure begins and where it ends. Now you'll notice that there's some other things outside of the structure, and you'll see that it says covered or concrete. Those are basically areas that sometimes people do maybe like a little what are those things called that you put? I can't remember. Like kind of like an awning. Some people do awnings from their roof to wherever it may be. That's what the covered areas that say covered. That's probably what that is. Or it could also be like that there's a tent, like a permanent tent that was, structured to the property itself. But it's a covered area, meaning it's open, right? Covered just means it has like some kind of roofing, but it's completely open on the sides. There is no interior to that area. Then you'll see that this property also has a shed within its property limits on the top right. You'll see the shed, and it tells you exactly the measurements of the shed as well. But most importantly, and something that every buyer should know how to read, is not only reading your property lines and knowing where your property begins and ends, but your easements, right? So if you look at the red line, it says U.E. U.E means utility easement. A utility easement belongs to FP&L because FP&L are the ones that provide us with electricity. So there are, and it seems to be underground, there are some electrical lines underground there. And that means is if, let's say, something happens and those lines right there, those utility lines get damaged for XYZ reason, FP&L has a right to access your property in that area to fix those lines. And when I say access your property, I mean they're literally probably going to dig up the lines, fix the lines. Now, it's very important to know that utility easement, specifically the one that we're looking at, it looks like it's 6 feet into our property. So 6 feet from the fence, from the back fence, onward to your property is where we have the utility easement. It's very important to know this for several reasons. One, if you ever want to build or construct a pool, you should not do it above a utility easement, because if you do, you're giving FP&L the right to destroy your pool to access these lines. And typically speaking, any contractor who does pools, it won't do it. Right? He'll tell you, no, I'm sorry, we can't build it there because there's a utility easement. But just so that you also know, just in case, in Miami, you never know who you're going to hire. But it's it's very important that you have your own knowledge to know that if I ever do a pool, I need to make sure that I leave sufficient space so that my pool's not on top of this utility easement, because it could affect me. So another thing is not only a pool, but if you want to do a pool floor, if you want to put concrete in the back, you can, by all means, you could do it. But just keep in mind that if FP&L needs to come to your property and access that utility lines that are there, they're going to break through your concrete. Whether it be the most beautiful porcelain tile that you got from Italy that costs you thousands of dollars, they will break through it and they will not have to fix it. They just have to access it. That's what gives them the easement. The easement itself is just that they have a right to access it. And if you make it more difficult for them to access it because you put a concrete floor, because you put a pool, that's on you. They will not fix that. So whatever they need to do to access that line, as long as it's not egregious, as long as it's not something crazy, they can't break your entire floor. They can't go 15 feet from their easement and start breaking. They can't do that either. It has to be, where the utility easement is, but they will not be fixing anything that they destroy. You as a homeowner will be the one that has to restore that to how it was before.
So let's say that they have just lawn and it looks really nice. There are some people that really take care of their grass. So
Mm-hmm.
they need to access that part, that easement, utility easement. Would they put the grass back? Would they
So
take care of the lawn?
unfortunately, they don't have to. They don't have to put the grass back. And typically, when you dig up grass, you've already destroyed it anyways. So what they'll do is they'll cover the lines again, right? So they'll dig up, get to the lines, and they'll cover it again, once again with dirt. But they will not put new grass in order to, fix what they originally dug up.
Okay, perfect. So let me ask you one more thing on here.
Sure.
Now, what is the living space of this place? Because some people would argue that the cover space is considered a living space. Some people would argue differently.
So
So, what it's considered in Miami-Dade County living space?
So the blue lines are what give you your living space. They'll tell you exactly what's considered a living space in that structure. So that 22.60, which is your back line, the 22 feet, 60 inches. Then you have the two lines going down, the 33 feet and 10 inches and the 42 feet and 50 inches. And then you have kind of like a little outward area there that's 11 feet by 9. And then you have your front, which is a 33 feet and 60 inches. That is considered your living space. Everything else that's outside of that, that does not have a blue line, that is just in black, those are just covered areas that are not considered living space and won't go into consideration when we're talking about your public records and how the public records reflect what a living space is and your square footage of your home. So the square footage of your home will be specifically what's within that blue line.
Perfect. And lastly, Valerie, can you can you confirm, is this public record or is just a private thing for each individual?
So surveys such as these are not public record. And I think some people may get confused sometimes because the plot of the actual community is public record. But the plot is just going to show how many different homes are in that community or in that area, not necessarily the length and the measurements of the actual lot. It just says lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, and it doesn't tell you like the structure itself. It doesn't tell you the living space. It doesn't tell you utility easements. So it's much different. So when we looked at a plot, and that is public record, that is something you can look up. When you look at the plot of an area, it is not a survey. It is very different, although it may look the same because they're still drawings. They look like drawings nonetheless, but they are not the same. A survey is what's going to give you the specificity that you need in order to know the easements on your property, in order to know the measurements of your property, the living space of your property, the fence of your property, where you could build a fence, where you can't build a fence, and all that fun stuff.
Perfect. Valerie, thank you so much. I really enjoy talking to you about the surveys and easements. And you know what? One last thing, encroachment. Where would you see? I was about to finish, but I really wanted to show our followers.
Yeah.
Where would you see an encroachment?
So there's no encroachment in this specific survey that we're showing, but an encroachment would appear here on your survey. So for instance, on the right-hand side, we see that there's a fence, right? If for whatever reason your neighbors have something within your property lines, whether it be their fence or whether it be a driveway, it'll tell you encroachment of 2 feet, encroachment of 1 feet, encroachment of 5 feet, whatever the encroachment may be. They'll let you know what the encroachment is on this actual survey. So that's another very, very important reason why you should always get a survey, because it's going to let you know whether anybody's using your actual property. And by anyone, it's typically going to be your surrounding neighbors.
So when would the buyer find out about this? What stage in the process of buying
No,
the
right.
property
So
will they find out?
encroachments are usually known by neighbors. For instance, in my property, I think my neighbor is 10 inches into my property, the way that they built their fence. That doesn't affect me. I don't really care because it's 10 inches. We're not talking about a significant amount of space. But typically, a neighbor will already know. So the seller will disclose that to you before you get too deep into the process. They may even tell you before you submit an offer, but a buyer will 100% find out once the survey is issued. And a survey is usually issued after two things. If it's a cash deal, it's going to be after the inspection and when the title company is going to go ahead and order it for you, or after your conditional loan approval. Once you get that loan approved, then the title company will order the survey, because then we know we're going to proceed to closing. So once we get that survey is when we'll know whether there's any kind of encroachments. If there are encroachments that the buyer was not made aware of, then that's another point of negotiation between buyer and seller. Maybe credits are given, maybe credits are negotiated at that point. And it also depends on how big of an encroachment we're talking about. If it's an insignificant encroachment, it's not likely that a seller is going to give you any kind of credit for it. But you do have a right. It is your property. So if you buy the property and there's an encroachment of 2 feet, that you just want your 2 feet, you can go ahead and destroy whatever's on your property and rebuild it or move it so that it's not within your, property limits.
Gotcha. Valerie, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I really wanted to talk to touch base
Yes,
on
of course.
encroachments. Guys, remember, we're here to assist you in your journey to success in the world of real estate. So if any of you have any questions, feel free to reach out Valerie directly or myself. I would love to help. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We are everywhere, so you won't miss any of our weekly episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in to your real estate journey, expertise for buyers and sellers, and I'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.